Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey, the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the Idea Guy Morgan. Russ, I was inspired by today's guest because I can only imagine what was going through his mind when he got called into that employer's office. Do you have a story like that?
Well,
is that a good enough lead-in?
Yeah, that's a pretty good lead-in. I was telling Joey right before we started this, we're thinking about our guest, and as you hear the start of this interview, you're going to hear just kind of the weight that he had on his shoulders as he was walking to his supervisor's office, knowing there's a decent chance he was about to get fired. And it just took me back to when I first got out of college. I was working at this company, and we rented cars, a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I'd been in the company about a year and a half, and I've been pretty successful, and I got promoted, Joe. I got my big break.
Bang!
So
who doesn't like that?
Yeah. So move up to Huntsville. Shortly thereafter, my wife and I got married. And
she was waiting on you to get a promotion too.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was like, well, I mean, he's renting cars. Like, should I really marry this guy? Like, where's this actually going? Oh, he's going to be a manager. Okay. That's worthy. Right. So I get the job at like the beginning of December, and at the end of December, it was like this holiday party. And so, I leave the office on Friday afternoon. I drive down to Birmingham. I'm staying at this really nice hotel, like this big thing that they had, it was really fun. Saturday morning, I get called and said, hey, by the way, your store was broken into. Oh. I'm like, oh, no. And so, I end up driving all the way back. It was about an hour and a half from Birmingham, and drive all the way back. And turns out, our office was open on Saturday in the morning, and the person who was in charge had left the safe open. They had one of these big safes, and it had like the big spinning top, so kind of move it back and forth in order to open it, and then you pull it open.
Yeah.
Well, they had left that unlocked, and so nobody stole any cars, but they stole all the cash that was in there. Well, that's a big, huge deal, right? You lose, I don't remember how much it was, $1,500. That's a really big thing. And so they ultimately called me into their office on Monday morning and was sitting me down and it's like, hey, look, this is kind of a fireable offense. Even though you weren't here, you are the manager in charge. And these individuals said that they didn't know how to close the safe, and you hadn't taught them. And I'm like, what do you mean I didn't teach them? Like, I mean, this is an elementary thing. They were working here before I even got here. I assumed they knew how. And it was, long story short, there was a couple of days that went by, and I sat in my office like wondering, like, am I going to get fired? Like, I moved all the way up here. I've signed a year lease. What am I going to do?
Is my wife going to leave me?
Well, right? we hadn't been married yet. Yeah. Like, is she going to fulfill this marriage obligation?
What if I'm not a manager anymore?
That's as close to the feeling that I have that whenever Dustin was sharing his story, that I think that I don't want to give it away because I want you to hear it. But this interview of how he's created a business that's automatic, that runs without him, that creates income on a monthly basis is something I want to make sure you get. And there's just so many nuggets in here. My story may have not given you any ideas what this conversation is going to be about, but that's just when we were talking, it's just what came to mind.
Yeah, you are not going to want to miss our interview with Dustin Heiner. He is the master of passive income, as his podcast show touts. And so we're going to jump right in. I don't want to hold it anymore.
And don't forget, because we don't do a good enough job of advertising the book, because I really like his book, is How You Can Quit Your Job with Rental Properties. So this is the author of that book. He has his own podcast. Definitely make sure you check out all these things. Let's jump into the interview with Dustin Heiner.
If you've been listening to our show for a while and you've heard the Stallion and I talk about how we use these life insurance policies to invest in our business, to buy real estate, and to do numerous other things, and you're like, look, I want to do that. That's what I want to have, but I don't have one of these policies. It's so stinking easy. Just go into the show notes, press the button to schedule a call with us. Somebody on our team can walk you through that process. Or go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, click the schedule a call now.
Welcome into the show. We have the distinct honor of having Dustin Heiner on the show with us today, man. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Yeah, man. It's just great to reconnect with you. It's fun to get to learn a little bit about your story. And I want to share this. Like, I want to dive right in because you kind of have a really amazing testimony to what most of the people who are listening to you right now are trying to achieve, which is kind of being successfully unemployed, is what your shirt actually said. So take us back to December 2016. What was going on at that time frame?
So December 2016 was when I decided it was time for me to quit my job. And really what it came down to is I realized even though I was making $70,000 a year, which is pretty good, I was making $70,000 a year. I was losing money because of the value that I would be able to put into my own businesses, to my real estate and everything else that I do. And so in December, it came after about 10 years of 9 to 10 years of investing, I decided to actually quit my job. Now, I'm going to pause that and I'm going to go back a little bit further. So I can't remember what year it was, but my 6-year-old she's now 6-year-old, but she was just born. So it was probably like around March-ish, many years ago. And my 4th child was just born. I just had paternity leave. I was out for a week and came back, and I was back to work for a week. And I got a call from my boss's boss. His secretary said, "Hey, Dustin, the boss wants you to come to his office." And I was like, "Oh, what? Okay, that's interesting." So I hang up the phone and I immediately start sweating. I immediately started like, what did I do wrong? You know, I've only been back for a week. I don't think I've done anything wrong. I was just on paternity leave and I got my kids and everything. My amazing wife is like depending on me. And I started thinking, what could be wrong? And then I remembered before I left, there was a little rumors of layoffs, of people having to go through a layoff process, or each department, because I worked at the county government at the time doing IT work. And this was for one of the departments. And I realized I might be getting laid off. And I immediately started sweating, started getting really nervous. And I started thinking about my family and my 4-year-old, my newborn that's at home, depending on me. So I get up out of my desk. I start walking down the hall. And as I'm walking down the hall, my feet feel heavier and heavier. My heart starts pounding even more because I start thinking more and more about how I'm going to provide for my family. And as I get closer and closer, I see the door to my boss's office is closed. I look over the secretary. She's a super nice lady. She looks at me and says, "Dustin, would you please have a seat? It'll just be a couple more minutes." And she's looking at me like, sheepishly, just being very empathetic and just kind of being very, very polite. And so I sit down and I immediately realize this is it. This is the time that I'm actually going to lose my job. And again, all these thoughts, emotions start rolling up in me. I get anxious. I start sweating even more. And then the door opens to my boss's office and out walks a coworker. She walks out with a piece of paper and you could tell she's distraught. She's upset. And as I see my boss come out, he says, "Dustin, would you please come in?" So I walk right in and it happened. I actually got laid off, and I had plenty of seniority. I worked for the government, which you almost never get fired or laid off from the government. So
you got to work hard to get laid off from them, right?
What's that?
You got to work hard to get laid off from the government, don't you?
Yeah, you sure do. So I never had any bad reports. Everything was great, but they just didn't have enough money. So as soon as I got laid off, I took my layoff notice. I had 2 weeks. And I went back to my desk. I sat down for 5 minutes and I allowed myself, I said, "Okay, you're gonna have 5 minutes just to sulk, just to be like, oh man, what's happening?" Then after 5 minutes went over, I said, "Okay, Dustin, this is the time. You need to do something about this. Number one, you need to get another job because you got to provide for your family. But number two, you need to change the way you make money." I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read Richest Man in Babylon. I read a lot of great books that said, you need to get paid for your value. Don't get paid by the hour. And so 2 things. I said, I got to get a job. So I said, let me go track down with that. So I called up every single department that I could and said, "Hey, I'm getting laid off. I have, I'd love to work with you if you have any openings. So my track record throughout the county was fantastic. I networked with so many people, so many different department heads. Eventually, I praise the Lord, I got a job in the sheriff's office, and same pay, same seniority. I literally just went from one job to the other, didn't even actually get laid off. And it was because of my networking. Now, what happened was I realized after that, two things. Remember, the first one was I need to get a job to pay for my family and my expenses. The second thing was I need to start doing something differently so I don't have to be dependent on somebody else. I need to be financially independent. So what I did was I decided it's time for me to start investing in real estate. I've wanted to, but I need to do that. And I realized with investing in real estate, what got me this next job was because I networked so much in my job that people said, hey, I like this guy. He works really well. Let's bring him in. I now changed my identity, who I was. When somebody would say, hey, Dustin, what do you do? Instead of saying, oh, I work for the government, I do IT work for the government, I say, I'm an investor. Now, I didn't have any properties because I didn't, just getting started, but I said, you know what? I am going to now become an investor with a side job. No, it's not my job with a side investing. No, I'm an investor with a side job now. So everybody I know now knows that I am an investor. And from there, I bought one property. Then I bought another property. Then I kept buying more and more and more. And after, I think it was like 9 years of investing, I finally was able, December of 2016, I pick up all my stuff. The sheriff's office was fantastic, great place to work, but it was time. I realized I'm losing money working here. I need to work for myself. So I go to my boss and say, you know what, boss, I'm done. He knew it was coming because we talked about it before. And I had my website, Master Passive Income, telling people I'm quitting my job. So he saw it too. That's a whole nother story. But my big box of all my belongings, and I'm walking out. A lot of people have walked home from work or walked to their car or, walk away from work. This was the best walk I have ever taken. It's only maybe like a 10-minute walk to my car because we work downtown. So you want to park further away so you don't have to pay for it. But I'm walking to my car. I felt like this huge weight was lifted off of me. I felt like I had everything in front of me. I'm so blessed. And here's the big thing. I quit when I had so much money coming in from my rental properties that I didn't need to work. And so I wasn't even worried about that. So now I jumped the gun. I said, I'm not going to wait till somebody else lays me off or fires me. Now I am successfully unemployed and I will never work a job again. So that's my story. And hopefully other people see I'm just a normal person. I just had a normal job and I did it.
That is awesome. That's very inspiring to hear the transition from being in that position of having someone else holding the control to you saying, I am the one that's going to make the call here and I'm going to walk out on my terms. One thing you mentioned, I want to just kind of back up a second, real estate. So you mentioned I've always wanted to do that. What was it about real estate that you saw, okay, this is the way that I want to make my way out?
Because I knew that after reading a few books, I realized that passive income is the way that I want to go. I want to work one time and get paid over and over and over again. And I saw, I'm not creative. I have a guitar right behind me on the wall. I love playing a guitar, but I'm absolutely not a guitarist. Like, I'm not good. I can't write a song like the Beatles and make money forever. I could write books, but they're more like, nonfiction books. They're just really how-tos. But I just needed to make passive income. And then I created so many businesses. I had a graphic website design company. I even had, pausing before that, I had a newspaper delivery route. I was, throwing papers as a kid, making money that way. I had a skateboard manufacturing company that I created. I had a convenience store, a retail establishment. I had a bunch of employees. I had a pizzeria, and I had so many businesses because I wanted to get out of working for a job. But the easiest one was the business that I created where I buy one rental property, and it takes me literally 3 hours in total from beginning to end, finding to buying the property. And then I release my team, the people that actually do the work. They get the property rented. They make me money every single month. And out of all, I have 30 some properties now. With that, I literally only work 30 minutes a month. Now, you heard that right. 30 minutes a month, because all I do is I get my statements from my property manager, make sure my bank accounts, I got the money, they're not stealing from me. Good. I can move on.
Man, that's crazy. Like that transformation that you touched on, Joey, that I heard, I heard the weight of your footsteps as you were walking to that first conversation with your boss, right? I feel that weight as you're walking through with everything, the heaviness of, man, I got a young family. I'm the one that's going to be supporting this family. To man, you were light. I mean, you're walking,
walking on air.
Yeah, Joey's got these fancy on cloud tennis shoes. This is years before those came out, but you were walking on cloud. I mean, you were literally just free. That's a feeling that most people are looking for. And you mentioned real estate, so let's kind of take us through that. So yeah, you started reading books, but you got a deeper education. Where did that come from?
So, well, honestly, my education really comes from the School of Hard Knocks, but I did go to there was a 2 a.m. infomercial. I don't know why I was up watching TV at 2 a.m. or it was maybe 11 p.m. or something like that. But it was one of those infomercials that say, hey, come to our free seminar. We're going to be in your town. We're this big company. Come to this free seminar about real estate. And I said, hey, you know what? I might as well go ahead. I don't know anything about it. So let me go ahead and try. So I went to that free seminar. I took my dad. My dad and I were sitting there watching it. And there's a big sales pitch, basically, big, broad overview. You don't really know anything. You just, it gets you kind of pumped up about it. And so after that 1 hour seminar, they sold $1,000 to get into a 2-day seminar. So the 1 hour turned into 2 days, $1,000 out of my pocket. So in this one seminar that's 2 days long, they talked about literally everything from flipping to wholesaling to renting to tax liens to land contracts, like everything. It was so high level that you could not do anything. Like you literally could not do anything because it's just so broad. And then after the very end of that 2-day seminar, they said, okay, we have the exact thing for you. Now we want to teach you exactly how to do the rental properties or flipping or this or that. Each one was like $30,000 to $35,000, like just rental properties, $35,000. Another one was $40,000, not to mention expenses. I had to fly to them in Florida. So after that, I realized, you know what? If I had $30,000, I'm not going to give it to them. I'm just going to go buy a house and learn from my mistakes. And that's what I did. I took all the money that my wife and I had. We've been married for like 6 months. And I took all that money, bought a property, and praise the Lord, it actually worked out really, really well where I was making money. So I rented for $550. And of that, I think I was pocketing about $350. It was going really, really well. So I thought, you know what? I got to buy more. I got to buy more and more. And the more I bought, the better everything got. So, but I've learned, I will say that I've lost tens of maybe $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 doing it the wrong way. So if I would have paid them $30,000, maybe it would have helped me save money, but that's $30,000. But in the end, I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. Now I've created basically a system, a step-by-step system. So I invest all over the country, and I have students that invest all over the country. I don't want to invest in my backyard because, when I was investing, I lived in California when I first started, and it was crazy expensive in 2006. Prices were this high, rents were this low. I couldn't make any money, so I decided I need to go out elsewhere. So I started buying in Ohio. Then I moved on to Texas. Then I moved on to Arizona. And so I just love buying out away from me so that I don't have to be there, number one. Number two, I have property managers that take care of everything. But here's the key. I don't pay my property manager. I don't pay my taxes. I don't pay my insurance. I don't pay the repairs. I don't pay any of that stuff. My tenants pay all that. So I account for every bit of those in my expenses before I buy the property. So you have your income minus your expenses. So I account for all those expenses. The income, my expenses, that's the profit that I make that goes in my pocket. So because of all that, I walked out of my job just light as air because I literally did not have to worry about a thing anymore.
Okay. So man, that's huge. There's like so many different possible ways that I could go with this, but I'm thinking about that person that says, okay, how can I do some of the same stuff, right? How can I learn from your experience, and what's the process of getting started? Like in your book, we actually downloaded that on Audible and started listening to it. You lay out kind of some process and some steps. The first one you mentioned is phase 1 is the blueprint. So what do you mean by that?
So the blueprint is you basically need to, number one, get your life in order to be an investor, and then be looking for the future of where you're going to invest. But the blueprint is basically who you are. You want to make sure, number one, that you're not going into further debt. You want to cut your expenses. You want to increase your income. You want to save more money. So now, praise the Lord, I have so much money that I can buy properties for cash, and then I refinance it, pull all that money out, and then I buy another property. So I keep recycling my money over and over again. But it all started with me understanding debt, having good debt versus bad debt. Good debt puts money in your pocket. Bad debt takes money out of your pocket. Understanding that. then understanding any debt that I have that takes money out of my pocket, I got to get rid of that. So getting out of debt, increasing my income, cutting my expenses, living on a budget, sacrificing. So for basically 8 years, I sacrificed and sacrificed and sacrificed. Every penny that did not go to rental property, I felt was being wasted. Like if we went on a vacation, I would think, man, that's like $1,000. That's another $1,000 I could put towards a property. And so we sacrifice. And our one vacation a year would be driving from Fresno, California to Phoenix, Arizona, where my in-laws are. And it's a 600-mile each way trip. That would be our one vacation a year for Christmas time. I saved every penny because I knew, I had the foresight. I said, in 7, 8 years, maybe 9 years at most, we're going to live like nobody else. And so now I travel the world with my entire family. So in 2017, right after I quit my job, my wife, my 4 kids, and my dad, we traveled all through Japan for 6 weeks through Japan. The year after, we did 6 weeks in Europe. And just now, we just got back from a 4-week trip along the East Coast, all seeing all the history. But it was because I sacrificed and I understand the value of money. I understand how not to be in debt and how to have money or save money for investing. Does that make sense about the blueprint?
Yeah, no, you got to have a vision, right? You got to be able to lay it out. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. And as I look through your book, and I encourage others to go out to Audible as we bought it, or they can go to your website and you give it to them for free for a small shipping and handling fee. But it's how you can quit your job with rental properties. And I was reading through that. I saw like that first step, the blueprint, as kind of, here's my vision. Here's how I'm going to get it done. But I got to start building a foundation. And that's what your phase 2 is. So talk a little bit about foundation.
So the foundation of the business is basically from understanding, step 1 being the blueprint, step 2, the foundation, is making everything solidified, where now you're understanding where you are in your finances and how you're making money. Now your foundation is where now you have an emergency fund. So if anything bad did happen where you lost your job, you can still stay afloat until you get another job. It could be also where you're saving up money so that when you do buy the rental property, you have money for a down payment or to pay for it outright or something like that. So in setting the foundation, we need to understand business in general. So understanding your finances is number 1. Number 2 is understanding business, making sure that you understand how businesses run. It's really, really not that hard. In fact, I'm not that smart, but business is very, very simple, especially the rental property business, because you have basically income and expenses. So plus and subtract, or addition and subtraction, all the things you really need to know in rental property. Now, there's a lot of things running a business that is different. On top of that, you need to learn as well. But so you need the blueprint and have the foundation. You need to understand how your entire process is going to be, where you're going to invest, how you're going to invest. See, now I don't talk about flipping properties very much or wholesaling. I love buying from wholesalers, but I don't wholesale. I want to make it as easy as possible, and rental properties are it.
So let me stop you there real quick though, Dustin. So you said learn about business. So what were some of the resources that you used to do that?
So everything from managing because we want to build employees or build a business that has employees in there. So everything from having systems put in place so that when you give it over to an employee, which being a property manager, a contractor, how to actually develop that properly. So in order to do that, now when you talk about like software or anything like that, I personally don't use a ton of software. A lot of it's through phone calls and networking through email. But in developing all the business processes, it's really coming down to understanding the business model and understanding how to work with people. And from there, you build that out to where you have a solid business.
So when you're working with people all over the country, what were some of those things that you learned of how to pick property managers, how to get these employees that you speak of that were working these systems for you? Obviously, you have to understand how it works yourself in order to probably hire the right property managers. But when you're working outside of your network or your immediate area, what were some of those ways that you were able to, get good resources, good employees to work for your systems?
That's a fantastic question. And the reason why is I lost so much money hiring the wrong property managers. What happened was the very first one. So I flew out to Ohio the very, very first time that I bought the property because I thought that's what you needed to do. Since then, I haven't. I've only literally seen one of the 30 plus properties I've had, only seen one of them. And that was before I bought it. It was my very first one. Now I don't even fly out. Now I just understand the markets by talking to people. Anyways, The first employee that I ever hired was a property manager. In the end, she started stealing from me because she started another business, and that business started losing money, and said, hey, Dustin doesn't know what he's doing. Let me just start stealing from him. And so what I had to do was figure out the right way and the right questions to interview property managers. So to give you a big, broad understanding of how I find property managers and how I suggest to do it, is I interview at least 5 or 6 different property managers in that area, because I want to find the best, the absolute best property manager. Number one, that I can work with well. Number 2, is capable of doing everything they're supposed to do, and trustworthy. I want to make sure that they're trustworthy. And so on, I think I even have in the book, I also have it definitely on my blog as well. My website has all these articles on how to pick the right property managers. Even I give 22 questions that you need to ask the property manager, and the answers of what you should be looking for. At least that's how I gauge it out. But I've learned from business, all the businesses that I've ever started, I learned this simple rule. You want to hire slow, but you want to fire fast. And so that property manager that was stealing from me, fired them literally the next day, as soon as I found out she was done. And so, but I hire very, very slow, because you want to make sure that each person that you're hiring is going to be trustworthy, and that you're not going to be losing money or losing sleep every night.
Okay. So before we get into the next phases, I don't want to miss that. You got to tell us the story. How is this person stealing from you?
Oh, so the property manager, really nice lady. We were working together for about 6 months. I actually flew out there, met her. We hit it off. She was really, really nice. She started managing my properties. I had the first one, and then I bought another one. I think it got up to 3 or maybe 4, and she was managing all those properties. So she knew that I had other businesses. I had my pizzeria that I was telling you about. And she called me up one day and said, hey, Dustin, I'm looking at starting a Subway sandwich, not Subway, but like a sub sandwich shop, her own brand, but to make sandwiches. She had a property manager that had a vacant unit. She wanted to get in there. And so she wanted to pick my brain on how to handle with inventory, basically how to run a business that's a retail establishment. And so I gave her at least 45 minutes or an hour, walking her through so many lessons learned that I had from my business. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope she's not going to get distracted from her business, which is my business, taking care of it. And so what happened was I started realizing that, hey, here's a not bill, on my statement, a line item, $900 for a main drain being replaced. Well, number one, I didn't hear about it. And she never told me about it beforehand. Number 2, I didn't get any receipts from it. Number 3, I asked her about it, and she said, oh, it was just this and this and this. And she was so vague. And so I started realizing that these charges that are coming up, I'm not getting receipts. Nothing's lining up. She has all these expenses that doesn't add, and her addition and subtraction wasn't right. So just playing with numbers, eventually realized, you know what? She's stealing from me. Even if she's not, she's incompetent. I got to get away from her. So literally the next day I got somebody else to go over and take over the entire business.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I've heard that. We interviewed a guest not too long ago, and they said that they had a property management company, and the guy, times got hard, and he was telling them, hey, we don't have your properties rented, and we're working hard to get them. And he flew over to the area and went to go see the houses just to see, could he help do some marketing for the properties themselves? It's I was going to go put out flyers in the businesses around it, try to stir up some thing. Maybe, they're not good at marketing, and went over and realized there was people in every one of the units that he had. So it happens. It's good to hear just what those stories are, because sometimes you don't know. And making sure when you're getting those line items, you got to have it. You're building a business, right? You've set your 5 phases up, sort of like building a house, if you will. Yep. You got phase 1, which is the blueprint. Phase 2 is the foundation. Now tell us about phase 3, the structure.
So the structure of the business is basically setting up the business beforehand by hiring the right people. Now, every step of the way, we're trying to build up a business, and just like building a foundation. Now it's actually getting the people in place, and that's interviewing people like property managers, contractors, realtors, even handymen, finding wholesalers, finding rental realtors, even agencies, getting your mortgage broker, getting insurance, getting inspectors. You want to build out the entire business so that it has a strong frame around it, so that when you run the business, it's actually running itself. And I liken it to this. Basically, think of yourself starting a convenience store. You have a retail establishment. If you you haven't built out the business at all. You haven't done anything, but you take a candy bar and you put it inside the store. Nobody's going to come buy it because you don't have the gondolas set up that actually where the candy bars sit. You don't have the ice or the cold storage. You don't have, fountain machines. You don't have cash registers. You don't have employees. You don't have a bank account. You set up the business first, and then you put that inventory into it to be sold. And so when you're setting up your business, you're getting the structure of your business. That is basically setting up your entire business so that it's going to run on its own. And a piece of inventory, just like a candy bar, every property that I have is a piece of inventory. So once I built up that business in one city, like I said, I invest all over the country. Once that one city is built up where I have all the pieces in place, then I get one piece of inventory, I buy the property and I put it into that business. And then when I'm ready, I have money and I have the deal, I buy another piece of inventory, put it in that business. So it just runs itself, and all I'm doing is just adding more inventory into that business.
All right, so let me make sure I got this right. So you go into a city and you look at all right, can I buy multiple properties here? So there's things that you're looking at. When we ask you questions around that in a second, you go, all right, will this be a city that can have multiple properties? So now I need to go find all of these different people. Now I need to find this property manager. Now I need to find this person who can do repairs within it. Now, then can I get somebody who can put tenants in here? Can I build a structure before you ever go buy a home? Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Now, how do you then determine whether or not this is going to be a city that you go into? What are some of those like key demographics or key metrics that you're looking at?
So I love buying three bedroom, two bathroom house that are 1,200 square feet to maybe 1,400 square feet. I can go through all the reasons, but I'm not going to right now. If you want to know, I can tell you more. But what's great about those is that two big ones, everybody wants to rent those. And then when I go to sell it, I have a huge pool of buyers that want to buy those. And so in looking at 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and then I also look for criteria of like total dollar amount. I just know East and West Coast, you're going to have a lot of not expenses. You have to spend a lot of money in order to buy one property, but you can only rent it for so much, which is not enough in order to make money. So I look at in the general area where not everybody's flocking to live, which would be like the Midwest, going from Indianapolis, Indiana, all the way down to Florida, Ohio, the Carolinas, looking from the Midwest down into the Southeast, you have some good priced properties. Now, I don't want to buy a $350,000 house unless I'm going to make plenty of money to offset the mortgage. My kind of bread and butter that I like to buy are $100,000 homes that I could rent them for maybe $1,200, $1,300 and make $250 or more. And so when I look for a criteria, if I'm looking at, so I use technology is fantastic. So I use all this technology. Zillow.com is one of the best resources to get started because you can zoom out, see the entire country, then start zooming in. You can add your criteria, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,200 to 1,400 square feet. And you can see populations of where these properties are and dollar amounts, let's say below or above 50,000, below 175,000. You can see where they're densely populated, start zooming in more. And then that's how I narrow it down to a certain city. Then once I do that, if I find a property manager that is I'm ready to work with, then I'll start buying properties after I build the business. If I can't find a property manager, nobody's going to manage my property, so it's worthless to buy the property because nobody's going to manage it. I'm not going to make money, so I move on.
Nice. Okay, that's really helpful. So you've set the plan in place with the blueprint. You got phase 2 there, the foundation. Now you set up the business with the structure you just mentioned. Phase 4, finishing touches. Walk us through that.
So that is once you understand that you have a business process with your property managers, your handyman, like all that, you give them the processes to actually run the business and you buy more properties, you keep putting in there. Now, the finishing touches is finding good tenants, keeping good tenants, keeping the properties updated, making sure you're taking care of like any municipality codes or anything like that. Like some cities and counties that I have properties in, you have to register as a rental property for some reason. Like they say they inspect it, but I don't know. I think it's just a way for them to make money. But you need to make sure that you're running the business right. Now, next up would be scaling. But right now, we just want to make sure we have tenants that are going to be in there, that are not going to destroy the property, and that they're going to be staying in there for a long term, and you're finding the right tenants. And a big one, if anybody's listening, is kind of thinking, how do I find a good tenant? Background checks. Background check could be eviction, criminal, credit, run, like every single background check you can do, you absolutely must do that. And I'll give you an example why. I used to not do background checks because when I first started, really economically depressed area, nobody wanted to pay for their own background check. So I would just take them at their word, try to maybe call some references and put them in there. Well, it came back to bite me so many times doing that because they would basically either lie or be false or whatever it might be, but it just didn't turn out, and I would have to either evict them or they'd move out in, maybe 3 or 4 months. I want people to live in my property for 2 years, 3 years. I want them long term. And so here's a quick story that I had a lady apply to be in one of my properties. And on the application, she looked fantastic, like perfect job, perfect record, perfect everything. And then I run a background check, and it turns out she had been evicted 4 times in the last 3 years. And I know I'm going to be the 5th one if I put her in. So I didn't pick her. And here's the key. I paid for that background check myself. That $35 background check saved me $2,000 in turnover because, eviction or, painting and all the cleanup and loss of rents and all that sort of stuff. $2,000 I was saved by $35. So background checks, but that's the finishing touches is implementing these business processes. And that's what I talk about in the book, how to make sure that you have a stable income because you're keeping good tenants in good properties.
All right. So tell me the resource that you use to do the background checks.
So there's a couple different ones, but recently the one that I love the most is called Cozy. Now it's COZY.co, not .com, but .co. And it's a property management software. Now, I have property managers, but there are ones that, there are areas that I don't use a property manager because I either know the property really, really well, and I got great tenants, so I just, skip the property manager, and I have them use Cozy. So Cozy is a property management system. People can pay through Cozy, or tenants can pay through Cozy. I get my statements, everything's ran through there, and they do background checks. It's completely free for me and the tenants. The only way they make money is when they run background checks, which is great because you need to do those. So I use Cozy for all my background checks. Then I have my property managers. They're the ones that manage the background checks. And then when they say, hey, I have a tenant that looks good, they send me the background check so I can look at it and I make the decision if I want to go with them or not. But they've already qualified them outside of that.
Oh, great tool. Love that. All right, let's go to the last phase, phase 5. So kind of going back through, we've got phase 1, which is the blueprint, phase 2, which is the foundation, 3 is the structure, 4 is the finishing touches. Now we're going to finish this all up on phase 5, which is the action items. Tell me what goes into action items.
So action items is basically where somebody doesn't have any idea and they've already gone through all the 4 different steps. Now we got to take action. Now we got to go find properties. Now we got to tell people, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, that you need to tell people you're an investor. You need to have action items of tell people you're an investor, start finding people that can either lend you money or be a partner with you, but you need to start figuring out where to get the money to buy the properties. Start looking at areas that you want to invest. If it's in your backyard, that's great. If it's another state, that's great, the same. But you want to make sure that you have action steps. And so in the book, I put exactly action steps. So you do 1, 2, step by step. And this is why it's called the step-by-step process to do this. It's the book's, the subtitle is that. I want to give you step-by-step process that I went through, that all my students have gone through, that have been a proven way to get your first property and get that business built up.
Man, this is awesome. So we've been going through your book, which is how you can quit your job with rental properties. And you've given us some very just like practical ways that we can do that. I love these 5 phases. I want to like continue this conversation, but I don't want to give all your book away. And not to mention, like, we have a community. We know you're going to come in there. You're going to give some more value. The things that you said you wanted to go into, but you were going to hold up. That's where I want you to dive into that.
We got to go there. Absolutely.
So, all right, man, this has been amazing. I really appreciate it. So, Dustin, if somebody wants to, either get access to your book, your website, other things that you're doing, your podcast, where could they find you?
Yeah, so I have masterpassiveincome.com. It's my website where I write all these articles. I talk about real estate in general, but specifically rental properties. I love rental properties, so I don't work and I make money. So go to masterpassiveincome.com. I also have the Master Passive Income podcast show. And so if you just search for that anywhere, but if anybody wanted to get started, I have a free course that I can download. Do you mind if I share that to everybody?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Awesome. So masterpassiveincome.com/free course, just one word, free course. and that will get you a download. It's a PDF that you're going to download. It basically walks you step by step, gives you plenty more than I talked about. You can download that, get started investing, and then there's so much more on my website, my podcast. I talk all about rental properties to get you started because I love talking about it, and I just love not rental properties, but what they allow me to do with my life, basically to live the dream life and not have to work a job.
Man, I can definitely hear your passion in what you're saying. You have definitely encouraged us and shown us how somebody can be transformed, going from that really just mundane and really scarcity mindset of, am I going to lose my job today? Having that happen and then rebuilding, no pun intended, this 5-phase way to now having all the freedom that you wanted. Man, I'm inspired. I'm grateful for your time and so excited that you're going to be in here to answer questions in our live Q&A next week. So, man, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the time.
Have you been listening to our podcast and wondering, am I the only person that knows about infinite banking? Or what about the 5 pillars of Wealth Without Wall Street? How can I learn more? Now is your chance. You can join the community that is learning this across the country.
Go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com where you can access Q&As with all our podcast guests and live group coaching with some of the top experts from across the nation. And yes, I'm throwing in the Stallion and I in that. Just go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com and sign up.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.